Have you ever wondered why we are so obsessed with a 2,000-year-old story about a lost city? I mean, from blockbuster movies to some really wild internet theories, the legend of Atlantis is probably more popular now than it has ever been. So let's dive in and see if we can separate the fact from the fiction in what is, truly, our most enduring myth. You know, the entire story, every single clue we have, comes from just one person, the Greek philosopher Plato. And what he wrote wasn't some dry historical record. No, this was a chilling, dramatic account of this perfect civilization just swallowed by the ocean. This one quote right here, it's the launching point for every treasure hunter and theorist who has ever gone looking for it.
So, okay, if you want to find a lost city, you're going to need a map, right? Well, for 2,000 years, Plato's dialogues Timaeus and Critias have basically been that original blueprint. For people who believe this isn't just a philosophical story, it's a literal checklist of clues to a real unsolved mystery.
And get this, Plato was incredibly specific. He described a capital city built in these perfect concentric rings of land and water. He gave us a location, out in the Atlantic, beyond the Pillars of Hercules. He even detailed the geology, mentioning red, white, and black stone. Oh, and he wrote about a mysterious metal, or a calcum, that supposedly glowed like fire, and this massive, sheltered plain. These details aren't just fluff. They are the breadcrumbs that have fueled this search for centuries.
You know, for most of history, Atlantis was kind of just a philosophical footnote. But then, in the 19th century, one guy came along and single-handedly reopened this ancient cold case, turning it into the global phenomenon that we all know today. And that man was Ignatius Donnelly. His book wasn't just popular, it was an absolute sensation. See, he didn't look at Atlantis as a story with a moral. He argued it was a real historical mother culture, the source of all civilization on Earth. And just like that, Atlantis wasn't just a myth anymore. Suddenly, it was the missing link in human history. This changed the game completely. Donnelly's whole argument was based on this theory called diffusionism. He'd look at the pyramids in Egypt and then the pyramids over in Mexico, and he'd ask, how could two cultures, separated by an entire ocean, come up with the exact same idea? His answer was pretty simple. They didn't. They both inherited it from a shared ancestor, Atlantis. All right, so armed with Plato's checklist and Donnelly's theory, the hunt for Atlantis went global. I mean, the list of potential sites is massive, but let's take a quick tour of the top 3 suspects. First up is Santorini, which is probably the most scientifically grounded candidate out there. Around 1600 BCE, this Minoan island, which was called Thera back then, literally collapsed into the sea after one of the biggest volcanic eruptions in human history. So you've got an advanced civilization that sank in a cataclysm. Sound familiar? For many researchers, this is the real-world event that could have easily inspired Plato's story. Okay, from ancient history, we're going to jump to the space age with our next suspect, the Richet structure, better known as the Eye of the Sahara. I mean, just look at it. From space, it is a dead ringer for Plato's city of concentric circles. And the measurements? It's about 23.5 kilometers wide, which is almost the exact size Plato described. For modern theorists looking at satellite images, this thing is Exhibit A. And way out in the Atlantic, we've got the Bimini Road. It was discovered back in the 1960s, and you have to admit, it looks a lot like a man-made road or some kind of pier. Proponents see an Atlantean harbor. Geologists, on the other hand, have a more grounded explanation, a natural formation of fractured beach rock. The debate still rages on, which, honestly, is exactly what keeps this spot so intriguing. But what if Atlantis wasn't just one city? A really popular modern theory takes a much bigger leap. It suggests that Atlantis was actually the capital of a global advanced civilization that was wiped completely off the map by a cosmic catastrophe. Okay, you have to look at this timeline, because this is where the modern theory gets really compelling. Geologists know that around 11,600 years ago, the Ice Age ended, like super abruptly. This event, known as the Younger Dryas Boundary, caused a massive spike in global sea levels. Now, when did Plato say Atlantis was destroyed? 9,000 years before his time, which also comes out to, you guessed it, 11,600 years ago. Proponents of this theory say that's no coincidence. That's a date. So this grand unified theory tries to tie everything together. All those dozens of flood myths you find in cultures all around the world, well, maybe they're actually eyewitness accounts of this same sea level rise. And these mysteriously advanced ancient sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which just so happens to be dated to 9600 BCE, They're seen as proof of a sophisticated civilization that was almost completely forgotten. So we've looked at the where, but maybe the most important question here is the why. Why, after all this time, and with so little hard evidence, does this myth still have such a powerful grip on our imagination?
Well, the answer seems to be deeply psychological. The myth taps right into our shared nostalgia for a lost golden age, right? A more perfect past we kind of wish we could get back to. It also works as this powerful moral warning about an advanced society destroyed by its own arrogance, a theme that feels incredibly relevant today. Then there's the thrill of uncovering forbidden knowledge, of cracking a case that mainstream science has supposedly ignored. And ultimately, our brains are just wired to see patterns. A single lost civilization is a much cleaner, more satisfying explanation than the complex, messy story of human history.
So, here's the crucial point. The power of the Atlantis myth really lies in the fact that it's still unsolved. The moment we actually find it, it just becomes dry history. But as long as it's lost, it can be anything we want it to be. A high-tech utopia, a spiritual paradise, or a chilling warning from our distant past. Which leaves us with one final thought. Maybe this whole centuries-long hunt for Atlantis isn't really about uncovering a city buried under the waves. Maybe it's actually about our search for a lost golden age, a better version of ourselves that we all secretly hope is still out there, waiting to be rediscovered.